the first afternoon session of day 2 of the Community Alliance Summit. You are in track 2 this afternoon. And during this session, we're asking that you, if you would have any questions throughout the session, to please post those questions in the Q&A or the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. And we'll read those questions after the presentations and get you answers. If you would like to be unmuted to ask your question verbally, that's fine. You can do so by using the raise hand function off to the bottom of your screen. There is closed captioning during this presentation. Please click the button off to the left of your screen that says closed captions, and those captions will automatically populate for you. And we do have ASL interpreters interpreting for you throughout the length of this presentation. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to Caitlin and Molly from St. Joseph's University. Caitlin?
Hi, everybody. My name is Caitlin Moran. I am an assistant professor at St. Joe's University, and I'm presenting with my colleague Molly Shepard, who's also an assistant professor. I'm in the teacher education department, and Molly is in the special ed department. And then we're going to jump to Sophia? Or should we go into?
Go ahead and do your presentation, and then we'll introduce, how about if you just introduce Sophia when you're finished?
Sure. Okay, perfect. So Molly and I, we talked about this earlier, but we do a bunch of research locally in Philadelphia. We're both in Philadelphia. And we study the early intervention system for kids 0 to 3 and early childhood special education from 3 to 5. And we had recently conducted a needs assessment where we talked to families and medical professionals and service providers and childcare workforce team members and administrators. And so we kind of took a look at the system in its entirety and kind of looked at what was going well and what some of the challenges were. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Obviously, COVID caused a major pivot in the system, and we think there's some benefits and some opportunities there, which I'll let Molly highlight super quickly. And then, you know, we'll hopefully be able to have a conversation about that and kind of what everyone else is seeing in the places where you all are working from.
So, hello everyone, I'm Molly Shepard. We, as Caitlin was saying, so some of the issues that we noticed, and we talked about this in the previous session, so I'm going to kind of zip through these kind of quickly, is just particularly the challenges around the referral system for children with disabilities. We know that children with disabilities are referred by their physicians, by parents, by their childcare providers, and the way that the referral system works in Philadelphia is it's typically a paper referral. And Caitlin and I learned through our needs assessment that almost 50% of the referrals were not followed through. Did not result in evaluations, and then sometimes families were dropped even if the child was found eligible for services. That it took a long time for services to be scheduled, or they lost track of families. It was a paper system or a phone call system. So families would, the referral was a paper system. Often people were faxing them. Those of you remember fax machines. And then there were a lot of phone call. Usually the family was phoned to schedule evaluations and in terms of follow-ups. And for particularly, Caitlin, I found that particularly for families who are non-English speaking or parents who were poor, those were the ones who were being lost track of. And you can imagine, if English is not your native language and you're getting a phone call from someone you don't know, that can be a challenge, or language can be a barrier. And then on the other side, it's if you do not have a consistent phone number, that follow-up phone call maybe never happens in terms of scheduling an assessment or following up regarding the results of the assessment. So, we are hopeful that maybe some of the benefits, the benefits of COVID or of this pivot is that, maybe people have more access to internet services. Providers have had to be flexible through this whole session, through the pandemic, of reaching families, and hopefully some of those strategies will carry over sort of in the post-COVID piece. And we're really looking at the pivot, post-COVID, which we're not there yet, but hopefully in terms of really making the system more family friendly, getting parents and providers to collaborate in a more positive way, and making sure more children go through the system, and if they need services, they receive them. And Caitlin can talk a little bit about what we see. I'm going to kick it back to Caitlin to talk about sort of what we see as short-term suggestions of what we can do, and then possibly some long-term suggestions as well.
Sure. So, it's interesting. The news as of late kind of isn't the direction we were hoping to go in terms of re-engaging families and identifying students. But, short term, we are really interested in seeing, again, what Molly said as far as the benefits go. Were there doors that opened because of telehealth? And, did the push for increased internet access in the city lead to any, more gains as far as families being able to engage or re-engage? So we think, again, there's a balance of positive things, and then kind of there's longer term reforms that we think may be necessary, like putting the system fully online, training information sessions for parents and caregivers. We've seen a lot around some confusion about child development and how that may be situated, culturally, expectations for child development. Talking to parents about accessing supports and advocacy, because we do have a lot of that across the city. There's a lot of people doing a lot of really great work. So helping families to plug into those networks. Training for childcare providers is something else that we're really interested in, just on the system in general. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the childcare system in the Philadelphia area, but generally it's pretty privatized, I'd say. There's a lot of different options, not necessarily all of the highest quality. So we're a little bit all over the map there. So making sure providers are aware of, the systems that are in place, closing some gaps on IFSPs and IEPs, so that, the people who are spending the most time with kids who have IEPs and IFSPs are able to see them and be part of those conversations. That's been a huge challenge from what we've heard from childcare providers as well. And then follow-up, there's just a lot of follow-up that's necessary, especially when kind of families go through the process of initial referral, evaluation, ongoing assessment and evaluation, service provision. So, we talked in the first session about the specific needs of families who foster and have foster kids, because there's a lot of red tape that we've seen and heard. Also, families experiencing homelessness, when so much of this requires a paper trail, as Molly talked about. So that's been a challenge as well. So some of our ideas and things that we're talking about across all these different stakeholder groups, but a lot of it too is we're realizing is kind of just getting people in the same room and facilitating conversations that maybe had been started, but could use a little more life in them. So communication across providers is something that we're working on, helping to facilitate, as well as the training piece. Molly, I don't know if you had anything else to add. I jumped from short term into long term, as far as
No, I think we covered, I think, back to, I always trying to be sort of a glasses half full person, but I know that one of the major or significant challenges in terms of connecting these childcare providers with the medical clinicians, with the parents, et cetera, was, time, connectivity, and then the HIPAA piece in terms of making sure those conversations were okay. And I think one of the big strides with COVID around HIPAA and telehealth is that a lot of you know doctors have had to figure that out, had to figure out how to have you know online medicine. And so I think that that's something that could probably catapult into more accessible physicians in terms of their time and supporting families that way. So how are we on time? I think we have a couple minutes then left for questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat at this time. Does anybody have any questions for Caitlin or Molly? If you could enter those into the chat or the Q&A, that would be great. Oh, could you put your email in the chat?
Sure. I think I did it. Doesn't seem to want to let me do that. I'm not sure if Caitlin is. And just as a,
I'll put yours in.
thank you. As an aside, also, Caitlin and I have been working with colleagues in California and have been looking at this in different areas. And so as much as we know that Philadelphia and our region are unique in some of the ways that this system work, in terms of some of the processes around the system of referral and service provision, these are universal early childhood special education challenges across the country. This is, making, and I think the whole field is going to be looking to come out of COVID with a different, hopefully being more family friendly and more collaborative and ready to support families. No, there's no D on my email. It's St. Joe's. That's the one they gave me.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, I guess, everybody. So we will turn it over then to Sophia.
Thank you, Caitlin. Molly, appreciate you. So for everybody joining me, thank you. I am Sophia Duck from the Mentoring Partnership, and you are seeing me as an African-American woman who is, her hair is black with, it's in a natural Afro style with a small bun in the top. And then I have huge black earrings that are circular with the words "Give Thanks" on them. And then a virtual background of a very green backyard and a couch behind me. So as I mentioned earlier, I am from the Mentoring Partnership and I am the training and engagement manager there. So I have the privilege of getting a chance to meet caring adults who want to serve as mentors for young people, while also getting a chance to engage with the young people at mentoring programs to provide them with trainings. So we have a lot of trainings that we offer organizations, and this is just one of the services that we provide. We also have technical assistance, which will allow us as an organization to help your organization to think about how to provide mentoring effectively for your community. We can talk about how to create a logic model, planning through what it will be to recruit mentors that'll be best fits for your program, and even how to market your program. So that all fits into technical assistance. And then with that is also thinking about training for your stakeholders as they relate to the mentoring program. So I wanted to share information with you all today about our trainings. So prior to lunch, I discussed some of our trainings, and I want to allow for some opportunity for you to ask questions on what trainings you want me to talk more about. And as I wait for questions, I will just give a brief description of our trainings again. But one thing that we believe in at the Mentoring Partnership is there are a lot of caring adults that want to have an intentional impact in the young people that are around them. And our trainings are there to help you do that, to think about that developmental relationship framework and helping young people by showing them that you care, giving them an opportunity to think about the ways to help them develop the power that they need in order to feel confident and have a seat at the table, which is really important for any young leader. But then also thinking about how to help young people expand possibilities. So through our trainings with adults, those are the conversations that we're having. And I mentioned specifically the word boundaries last time when we talked prior to lunch. So really, given the pandemic and the fact that a lot of programs moved to virtual mentoring, virtual in-school sessions, virtual after-school programming, how to create conversation in spaces that were safe, and really thinking about not only the individual who was the adult and that mentor, their boundaries, but also thinking about the young person's boundaries and getting a chance to see inside somebody's home could have been a very personal experience, and not everybody's, these are windows that we didn't have prior to the pandemic. So we did talk a lot about boundaries and what that meant for every caring adult or individual who wanted to serve as a mentor for young people in a different way. I can put my email in the chat, by means. So just thinking about our programming, I mentioned that mentoring happens several different ways. There's that formal mentoring opportunity where you are matched with a young person. You know that you're going to meet with them at a certain time, a certain space, and it's a regular occurrence. But then there's also those people that we call everyday mentors. And those mentors get a chance to maybe just have a 5-minute conversation with a young person that can last a lifetime of learning growth for that young person. Sorry, just let me finish my email here. So those are what we call everyday mentors. And everyday mentors show up as teachers, as coaches, as barbers and hair salon stylists, crossing guards, really thinking about those times that we get a chance to show up for young people. I serve as a mentor because I'm a coach. I also have nieces and nephews that I get a chance to spend time with. So really just thinking about those small deposits I have in addition to the formal relationship that I have with an 8th grader right now. So because we value those opportunities, and we want to make sure that every caring adult knows how to engage in conversation and to handle those, even those small moments, we have a training that is called Everyday Mentoring. And this training can be as short as 75 minutes, so a little over an hour. And we talk specifically about that developmental relationship framework and helping a caring adult understand what tools you already possess and how to shape those things into becoming great conversations with your young people. In that training, we also address listening skills. And again, thinking about how we say we're listening, but sometimes our focus isn't always there, or maybe even our empathy isn't in the right place, right? And not being able to see something that a young person may be going through or experiencing it from their perspective. So we have that conversation, again, just a quick hour and a 15 minutes, hour and a half, with that 75-minute minimum. But that training can be as long as 4 hours. And we take that deeper dive. Again, I'll keep saying this word again, is really thinking about boundaries. We talk about challenging behaviors. And then we also spend time thinking about young person's sparks and how, as a mentor, it's not about what I want for my mentee or that young person, but what are the things that they want? What are they interested in? And how can I help to expand those possibilities? So that is one of our initial trainings. And again, that's the one that we deliver for everyday mentors. Our other introductory training for caring adults is what we call Mentoring 101. And this is that I know I am going to be a mentor. I'm excited about working with a young person, but what are the basics that I need to know? And we take a dive into those conversations, which includes information that I just shared with you as far as that initial 75 minutes that we talk in everyday mentoring. But we spend a good deal of time talking about boundaries. We talk about listening skills, and we spend more time thinking about sparks. And then I challenge your growth in the sense of how do you plan on doing these things? And we have conversations about a plan that you can create. And we also talk about the idea of that mentor life cycle. So I know that I'm going to be with this young person for a certain amount of time, and what I plan to achieve in that 10-month period, 1-year period, and then the expectations for what that transition looks like. Transition is a life skill that a lot of young people can be afraid of, right? Thinking about that transition from middle school to high school, the transition from high school to either college or the workforce. And it can be a very scary time for young people. So we talk deeply about what that looks like and how to manage that safely so that your young person can feel less anxiety about that. And given one thing that we learned during the pandemic is that transitions didn't happen. A lot of schools closed, a lot of mentoring programs ended, and there wasn't that final closure conversation. So what we're talking about now is setting up a plan to have that healthy transition. So that is another training that we offer. We offer a lot of our trainings, by the way, virtually. So if you are interested, our virtual trainings are not longer than 2 hours mostly. There are a few that will go a little over, but we recognize that Zoom fatigue is real, and it's real for the facilitator as well. So making sure that we're only offering trainings in those 2 hours or less time spaces, and we can offer it more than one session if you need it if you really want to accommodate one of our longer trainings. So those are initial trainings for mentors, as I talked about. And then for our young people, we have 2 initial trainings. One is our mentee training, where we really help young people understand their place in that relationship. It's not, I don't think any of you heard me talk about a mentor training and we're like, oh, yeah, that's something that definitely should happen, right? But we don't often hear the idea of helping to prepare the young people. And we think that that is really important, that young people also understand why they are in a mentoring program. Oftentimes the communication or the messaging isn't positive for mentoring programs. So helping that young person recognize that this is a great opportunity to engage with an adult, a caring adult who wants to help you achieve goals and to kind of redirect focus in some areas, or just walk alongside you and offer advice when they are asking for it. So these are the conversations that we have as part of that mentee conversation, and thinking also about boundaries, how to communicate. I remember my very first experience being a mentor and being matched with an amazing 6th grader who just didn't talk a lot, and thinking personally that they didn't like me. I didn't go through mentoring 101 training, by the way, so I wasn't aware of the fact that that is something that happens. But I also think that my, at that time, mentee would have benefited from a conversation about how to communicate with a mentor and thinking about utilizing that hour that we had together more intentionally. And we have learned from our mentors who had that opportunity to see mentee training be successful in helping them to develop a relationship faster, and be able to have a more committed relationship in the beginning from the mentee's perspective. So then the other training that we offer in that introduction is also thinking about making the most of mentoring. And this is a training that will help young people to think about the caring adults that they have in their lives, to increase their social networking, and how to also make the ask. So there are young people, I mentioned to you all that I serve as a coach. So I have girls and boys on my teams who just see me as a coach, but I also have a few over the years who are like, no, my coach is amazing, right? And I am, but recognizing that I can also offer them advice about college. I can offer them advice about why I coach the sport that I coach, things that they can do, the fact that I still play, and how they can be thinking about making opportunities for themselves to play post high school if it's not going to be collegiate or whatever. So really just thinking about how some of my young people see me as more of a resource and not just a coach that they are in season with for a couple months out of the year. So that's what the purpose of this Making the Most of Mentoring training is really giving young people a chance to think about the value that they have with the amazing assortment of adults that are in their lives, and then giving them the initiative to think about how to make the ask. So I, again, just want to remind you, if you have any questions, I can go deeper into some of these conversations. If you are interested in a training, whether it be virtual, and at this time we are predominantly offering our trainings virtually. I'm happy to, if you want to reach out to me via my email, I'm happy to send you a training request form that will help us logistically plan out the session on what content you want us to cover and how many people and so forth. And we can have that scheduled for you. We ask for a 2-hour grace period for us. My schedule fills up very quickly, especially at the beginning of the school year. But we have a great assortment of trainers who are also capable of leading a session, but they don't work for us full time. So I need to make sure that they are available in order for us to commit to offering a session for you. So as I mentioned, all of our trainings are, again, available for you virtually. And I know the question many of you are asking may be, well, how much does it cost? If you are a partner with us, and I can discuss what that means, these trainings are little to either free or little to no charge at all. So again, just reaching out to me to have that conversation, and we can talk about what that would look like for your organization and how we can partner to make sure, again, our mission is that young people who want a mentor have a mentor. And that is our goal, is to train those caring adults and to help young people feel confident about being able to ask adults for assistance where needed. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware of why I'm sharing this, and the fact that we want to be able to support any youth serving organization, or again, any caring adults who are working with young people in various spaces, and how you fit into this natural or everyday mentoring space. So I want to pause because I know we're coming close to the end of our conversation, see if there are any questions, and then also give time for our wrap up this afternoon. I again thank you all for your time and for sharing with me, and for taking the time during these last 2 days to personally develop and to have your growth, helping that this has played a great role in what we're going to accomplish in this next coming academic year. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. Does anybody have any questions for Sophia or Molly and Caitlin? I don't see any currently coming up in the chat, but feel free to type those questions. We have just about 2 minutes left in this session, so we're happy to answer any questions. And again, if you'd like to ask your question verbally, that's fine. Just go ahead and use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then we'll go ahead and end this session. And I would just like to remind you that you will be receiving a brief survey following the closing of today's session. And it would be great if you could complete that survey to let us know how we did and how this conference might suit your needs better in the future. Thank you all for attending.